Well, hello everybody. Timothy Painter talking to you from the mountains again. So we got news on the RTR today, and it was sad news, I've got to say. For 9 years, the RTR has been kind of the Rock of Gibraltar for camping in the desert, for conventions in the desert. They've kind of thrown a mini convention in the desert for many years, for 9 years, in which they provided camping and seminars and all of that. And unfortunately, Bob Wells announced today that that will no longer be. Yes, the RTR is still going on, so don't panic. They're still having the RTR, but they're not doing the RTR camping anymore. And to understand why, I think you need to know a little history about the RTR. For those new to the channel or people who just have not heard, the RTR is called the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous. It's a meeting of nomads held in the desert. It was started by a guy by the name of Bob Wells with Cheap RV Living. He put up a website, and then in support of that website, he did a gathering, kind of like a jamboree, kind of like the old mountain man jamborees they used to have when he, and this is Bob's story, when the mountain men got together. They would get together about once a year, and they would pitch camp together, and they would have events, and that was his original vision. And I think he was very successful at doing it for 9 years. The first RTR was tiny, maybe 45 to 60 people. There just weren't very many people. Some of the big famous YouTube people came from that era, and you'll recognize their name: Nomadic Fanatic, Ganaja, and those people. Some of them went from the very first RTRs. And then the RTR exploded, and I mean exploded, and it got bigger and bigger. And in the last 2 years, the RTR has been, by some accounts, completely unwieldy, meaning that there were so many people. The estimated number of people last year was over 10,000 people. And every year, Bob moves the camp. Well, not every year, but in many years, he's moved the camp and has it in a new location. Last year, Bob had it in a new location. It was a normally no camping area, and the BLM made it available to Bob to have it have the RTR in that place. And in order to get to the, I think it was 1,300 acres, or 1,100 acres, it was a lot of land on the BLM. You had to go through a really steep wash, and it was one-way road in and one-way road out. Well, you can imagine that there was a lot of criticism in advance about what could happen if that one road lane got blocked. And of course, Bob pushed back and said, no, we'll manage it. Don't worry. It's going to work out. And I think, to the credit of the Cheap RV Living people, it mostly did work out. They have wonderful traffic control, and they really made passing the one-lane road down into the ditch very pleasant. But a lot of people said, well, what happens if there's a fire, or what happens if there's a flood? Well, there wasn't any fire, but there was a huge rainstorm, and there was a flood of sorts through the ditch, through the ravine, and I think maybe some low-centered vehicles might have had some trouble. Some vehicles got stuck in the mud, and you can just bet those guys, the Cheap RV Living staff, stepping out of their campers thinking, wow, it really could happen. We really could have a high enough flood that people could get stranded, and then a medical emergency or something else. And I suspect, I don't know this happened, but I'll bet they were thinking to themselves, do we really want to take on this kind of liability? Because it's a tremendous amount of liability. There's also been a long-standing feud in the RTR between the people who want music and the people who want quiet. In fact, Bob left one of the RTRs because he was so frustrated by hearing after-hours music. The next year, Bob shut down a karaoke party. So last year, in what appeared to be an end run around Bob, the people who wanted to have a party established their own camp right next to the new RTR camp. They did so on the old RTR land, and they called it the PAR-TR. So I just hope that the decision to hold the event at the fairgrounds wasn't Bob's way of getting back at the PAR-TR people by putting a huge distance, miles and miles of distance, between himself and the next closest camps. That would be a real shame. After all, Bob said, there's plenty of camping on the BLM, but not near the fairgrounds. And at the same time, Bob has suffered excruciating, blistering criticism over his choice of RTR sites. Every year people bitch about the road going in is too rough, and the access isn't appropriate, and why isn't it in a bigger city, and why isn't it on the East Coast? And the criticism just goes and goes and goes. And so, considering all of those things, the blistering criticism, the fact that something could have happened last year real easily during that flood, fortunately it didn't, made them really consider. And so what the RTR is going to be this year is a big event at the fairgrounds, and everybody's on their own to camp. Now let me tell you why that's not such a good thing for all the rest of us. Bob said it would be different but better. Well, it's different but better for him, in meaning that probably he and his staff will camp right there at the fairgrounds, and if you're on the inside of the Bob Wells caravan people, you're going to get a close-in spot. But if you're not on the inside of that circle, you've got to go out into the desert and you have to find your spot. And the problem with that is that the fun of the RTR, besides all the seminars, which were fun, but the fun is that you got to see all the different camps. There was the music camp, and there was the art camp. There was an LGBT camp. There was kind of a radio or live stream camp with Hobotech last year. There was a gold miners camp. There were some escapees that were camping nearby. And you felt like you were part of a much, much bigger organization. And that, unfortunately, will be gone. Now, I can't say that it's all bad news. Maybe this will be even better. And let me tell you how. What happens if people start going from camp to camp and they spend 3 days here, and then they do the Lollapalooza thing, or they do some other kind of event, and we get to know more people instead of fewer people? My problem is with it is that when we're all spread out throughout the desert, and there are millions of acres out there where you could camp, then how do you get the chance of knowing people? It always takes me a little time, and just sitting by somebody in a seminar isn't enough time to really get to know them. You kind of have to be camped with them for a day or 2 days to really pull off your hat and pull up your apron strings and cross the aisle and say hello. It just works that way. So I was really sad to hear that they have made this decision, and I'm kind of not surprised that they waited until now to tell us, because I think there will be a lot of discussion about it, and probably some of it will be blistering. But now the other new thing is they want $5 to get in, and supposedly it's just a donation. That's where all entrance fees start, is just a donation, and then they make you feel bad if you don't pay the donation. For your $5, they're going to give you a bumper sticker, and that's still a long way short of $75, which Jamie is charging, making his $50,000 down the road on Shea Road. And so $5 is really a bargain. Still, it's a fee to get in, and you don't get camping with it. You just get to go to the events. So that's kind of the news on the RTR. And, most of all, I know there are going to be some haters out there who don't like the way I'm presenting this. I don't blame Bob for making these decisions. After all, it was kind of a thankless chore. He's doing this big event. He's spending his time. He's spending his money. And, of course, it's all in support of his business, his webpage, and making a large sum of money on YouTube and Amazon referrals. But still, no one else is doing it that I can tell, or not many other people are doing it. And so my hat was always off to him for taking the initiative and doing this. I kind of got the idea that there was a lot of them and us during the last RTR. Them being all of the public, and us being the big staff, the big shots, putting on the event. And what do you want to bet? Somebody was whispering in Bob's ear, if you get rid of all the campers, well, this would be so much easier. And that's what they did. They got rid of all the campers. But I think in doing so, they've lost the soul of the RTR. But it isn't going to be the same, but that's just how life is. Things are not always the same, and you just have to get through it. And I hope that it will be a good event. I'm not sure that it's going to be an event with me in it, though, because I don't see camping somewhere out there and they're saying tie ribbons on the side of your car or put a sticker up so other people can identify who you are. It just isn't going to be the same, and I'm not sure I'm willing to travel halfway across the country in order to go through that. I'm thinking maybe Texas and the Gulf Coast might be for me this year. I don't know, though. My mind, I'm still open-minded to it. And geez, nothing I'm saying here today is meant to be critical in a cutting sense. I'm trying to be constructive. I hope that this is the last year that the RTR people separate out the campers from the seminar people, and that they go back to establishing a main camp. Or if they do separate them out, that they have at least a main camp and then their own seminar camp, so that we can once again all join together. And it isn't that everybody is together. There are some very different political leanings. There are people who really like loud music, and there are people who really like their quiet time, and there are people who really hate generators, and there are people who have to have generators. They are on machines like I am, or they're on other things. And it isn't that they're all just get along together, but there is a certain synergy when that many people park their rigs next to each other. There's a certain sense of belonging, and I think that will be missing this year in the RTR. Well, this is Tim Painter. If you like what you see, please press like. If you have a comment, if you have a thought about how this RTR thing will shake down, let me know. Be sure to say hello to Camo Dave, because he predicted this. I did too, if you watched my earlier videos. But he really came out and said it well pretty recently. And be sure to leave a comment, as I said, and most of all, subscribe. The channel survives on subscriptions. So I wish you all the very best, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. I'll show you the view out my front window. Wow, this is just really something.